So instead of seeing Snowden or The Blair Witch, last Saturday we went to see a movie that came out the first week of September, but we never got a chance to seeing it. I saw The Light Between Oceans. The Light Between Oceans is set after World War I. Michael Fassbender is a World War I veteran. He goes to this town to be this new lightkeeper, and it's supposed to be a temporary job. Now the lighthouse is in a deserted area. It is on this island in between oceans, hence the name The Light Between Oceans. There's no towns on this small island or anything, it's just this island, the lighthouse, and the home for the lightkeeper. Through some circumstances, Michael Fassbender becomes the permanent lighthouse keeper. Now he does fall in love with Alicia Vikander's character, who is living in town. They marry, they end up living at the lighthouse on this island, but sadly, after failed attempts, they are unable to have a child. Lo and behold, this small ship gets washed up ashore with a baby, still alive and in need of help. They take the child as if it's their own. However, things get complicated when the real mother might actually be living in town, played by Rachel Weisz. To be honest, going into the movie, I didn't really know all that much about it. To this day, I have never seen the trailer for the movie. It's never popped up on any of the movies that we went to in theaters. The only reason I sort of knew about it is people I knew had seen the trailer pop up and wondered if I was going to see it. That's when I learned Michael Fassbender, Alicia Vikander, Rachel Weisz were all in the movie, and it's from the same director of a film that I really enjoyed, which was The Place Beyond the Pines. I have not seen Blue Valentine yet. I've honestly never heard about it. I just heard about the title, so I don't even know what it's about. I just know that director is responsible for that movie as well. And I have to say, even though I don't like it as much as The Place Beyond the Pines, I really enjoyed it. Out of the straight-up dramas that I've seen this year, this is one of the better ones. First off, we have 3 good actors in the film that I've liked a lot of the things they've done, almost everything they've done, and they were great in this movie as well. I mean, hell, Michael Fassbender, Rachel Weisz, Alicia Vikander, all phenomenal performances in this movie. Especially with Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander's chemistry. That was really amazing, and Alicia Vikander does play a little bit more of the crazy type, the one that's super depressed and, well, could do some crazy things. She was still really amazing in it. And who could blame her with some of the stuff she goes through? My God. That's another thing that this movie did well. I really cared about the characters. I know that sounds like such a simple thing, but there's so many movies that I still like and still enjoy where I don't really care about the characters all that much. There's not a great depth to them, and I never really care too much about what's going to happen to them. I just care more about the plot. In this one, I cared truly about all the characters involved, even the character that could have easily been put as the antagonist, which is Rachel Weisz. I mean, they could have easily made her to be like the evil mother that wants to take the child because Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander are the main characters, and they could have easily made them as the saints trying to take care of this helpless child while Rachel Weisz is trying to take her away from them simply because I'm your mother, you need to be with me. I mean, it could have easily went to the almost evil stepmother type route, even though she's technically the real mother. But I think this movie did a really good job at helping me sympathize for her as well. This was really tough for me to think of who deserves the child more. I felt bad for her, I felt bad for Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander, I felt bad for the kid who had to have been completely confused because she's raised 7 years, or is it, no, not 7. It's like 4 or 5, she's pretty old. She's been cared for years by Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander, and so to find out they're not the real parents and this other woman that she's never met is her real mother, that's gotta be really crazy. Of course, because of this, a lot of the crazier, more complex, more dramatic moments happen about halfway through the film and past that. Sure, there's definitely some very sad moments towards the very beginning of the film, but once you find out that the real mother is still in town, that's when things get a little complicated. The movie is beautifully shot with great scenes and great shots of the ocean and sunsets and very beautiful things, but also some of the camera angles and just there's things that are just magnificently beautiful in the cinematography. The score is amazing as well. Score is something that I don't really talk about much in my movie reviews because oftentimes they go unnoticeable for me. They don't really connect or really just like, wow, that was amazing, that's something I should talk about. But score in The Light Between Oceans was magnificent. Even from the beginning, it sort of had this beautiful, almost romantic feel to it while still having a deep, dark, broody underscale to it, this beneath it. Almost like you would hear for a horror movie as our unsuspecting victims are going to the dark, evil place where they're all going to be killed. But still having this really adventurous, emotional, very almost romantic type of movie score. There's something very interesting about it. It's really hard to describe, but I really enjoyed every time the score was played throughout the movie. There was definitely a very classical feel to it. I know it's a period piece technically because it is set in the 1918 to 1920 something, give or take. I know it jumps forward towards the very end to the 1950s. But overall, it's definitely a period piece because it's set in an older time. I mean, technically, a movie set in the 1990s would technically be a period piece, I guess, nowadays, right? But there's this classical, almost style to the movie that makes me think of older movies. And it's really hard to pinpoint what exactly made me feel like this was more of a classic tone in a movie. Because even though it is set in the 1920s, the costumes and stuff didn't scream out 1920s blatantly. It wasn't like there's this special film stock or aspect ratio that was blaringly obvious. The score itself almost gave me that feeling of classic, but I don't know, maybe it's the story, the plot, how everything is moved along, the pacing, the score. There's just something about it that when I was watching the movie, I felt like I was watching a classical movie. This is definitely a very character-driven story, and a lot of the really great performances are in the subtle things or the things that aren't really spoken through dialogue. There's another film I saw this September that is very similar to that, and hopefully I'll get a review of that soon. It's Other People. I did see that. That's right now it's between that, Sully, and this movie as being my favorite of September so far. Those three movies are really good. And to be honest, so far the only three movies I've seen from September that's worth seeing. But it has a lot of dramatic twists, a lot of dramatic moments that aren't really spoken, aren't really clear-cut, like said through narrative or through dialogue. They're just little moments that we as the audience figure out and piece together, and then when something very small happens that's like, holy crap, this could turn out to be really crazy. There's a lot of moments like that within this movie, and I know it's really hard to explain. I probably made it more confusing than I possibly could have. But there's a lot of little things in the drama that is really amazing in this film. And I think the film definitely gave an epic job of really getting us into the heads of the character without doing it through monologues or dialogues, but just from the performances alone and the plots and the actions that the characters do. Michael Fassbender is definitely a very conflicted character and one of my favorite characters in the movie. But then pretty much all three of the main characters are pretty much my favorite characters of this movie, so. Now this is definitely one of the longer movies of September so far. This is over 2 hours long. I think it's 2 hours and 13 minutes, give or take. Personally, it did not feel like that to me. It felt like it went by fast. It does take place in a span of a pretty great number of years. The main chunk of the story is probably like 1918s to maybe later 1920s. So it probably takes the course of like 10 years, or give or take. But then the last scene jumps to the 1950s. But for some reason, this movie really did feel like it went by fast for me. And maybe it's because there is a lot of, I wouldn't call them montages, but they have a similar feel to them. There are moments where there's this scene where it's just little bits and tidbits of scenes stretched into a span to make it look like, okay, time has been passing. And so they almost have this montage feel to them, but not really being a montage, at least not in my eyes. There's definitely a lot of that, but they did a really great job at really showing just how the characters have been acting through these years and really give, like, okay, they really care about this child and make you feel for them and something genuine. These little montage-like sequences really do a great job at building the relationships of the characters in a way that's manageable and really shows the passing of time. Usually I like relationships in movies and dramas to blossom a little slowly and give us more detail, but for this movie it really worked effectively. There's definitely some dialogue throughout this movie that can be considered dramatically cheesy in the romantic way, like some eye-rolling things, but the way that it's performed, how it's spoken from the actors, it really made me believe it. The one little thing that I didn't like too much about the film is I felt that Michael Fassbender's character and Alicia Vikander's character fall in love a little too quickly. Granted, the real true love is when they're at the lighthouse and then the notes that they were passing back and forth while he stayed at the lighthouse alone and she was in town still. Even before that, there were scenes with her and him that made it look like love at first sight sort of feel. Now that probably can happen to real people, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that claim I've found my true love at first sight, but sometimes for me that just gets a little too cheesy if done wrongly, and this is one of those times where it felt a little too fast, at least before they start passing notes. Like even before they start passing notes and talking, communicating through each other through these letters, that's when I felt the relationship was really blossoming. But before that, she even proposed, well, why don't you marry me? And well, maybe it was meant to be as sort of a joke feel or something, I don't know, but I think it was genuine when she spoke it. That felt a little too fast, but everything after that felt like it progressed really nicely. I went into it knowing, okay, I liked one of the director's movies, I liked both of the actors involved with the main cast, surely I'll like at least that, and maybe I'll just come out of it thinking, oh, that was good, that was okay. But honestly, I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to give The Light Between Oceans 4 stars. So did you see The Light Between Oceans? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. If you've read the book, is it very different from the movie? Because I've never read the book, and I know it's an adaptation. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews of 2015 and 2016. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.